Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right, hello my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I have the privilege of being your host for today's show, and I am ecstatic for multiple reasons. One is the fact that so many of you are already on. I see over 20 already logged in with us, which is great at the beginning of the show. You guys are obviously excited for these Lab&Learns. We're so excited too that these are gaining traction. Here's the other thing I'm excited for. I just got permission from our COO to announce this. So if you are an FDN trainee, if you're an FDN graduate, just know we're going to announce this formally tonight in our respective groups for those individuals. But you are literally the first FDNs hearing about this publicly. Long story short is this. This is very exciting though. Don't skip through this, please. Reed used to host FDN conferences prior to the pandemic. If you guys don't know, it's incredibly expensive to host a conference, and then the pandemic happened and you kind of get screwed with that kind of stuff. So what we did is we went to the HICS conference in October, which was hosted by our friends Jeremy Maleka and Jen Maleka. Jen's a very well-known FDN, and Jeremy is the founder of Biocanic. And so Dr. Gonshor remembers this actually. We went to Reed's house afterwards, after the conference that weekend, and Reed was sitting there and you could see he gets this spark in his eyes. And I'm sure he's had this many times in his life. And he said, you know what? This is pretty cool not having to host the conference, but we still get all these FDNs here because we had over 70 FDNs in attendance at HICS conference in San Diego. So he said, let's go find another one to do. I'm like, is this guy serious? He was absolutely serious. So we are officially announcing our sponsorship with the Biohacker Expo in Miami, Florida, February 28th and March 1st of 2025. So this is going to be like HICS on steroids. We are trying to get at least 100 FDNs in attendance there. Reed will be there. Elizabeth will be there. Myself will be there. We're talking to the rest of the staff soon. They don't even know this information. So sorry if they're listening.
Maybe I should be there.
Dr. Gonshor. Dude, you were like a fan favorite at HICS. You got to be there. We are so excited to have you guys there with us. So it's Miami, Florida, February 28th and March 1st. Biohackerexpo.com. And it's code HDP at checkout. Here's the best part. Sandy Martin, wonderful person to work with. We'll have her on the podcast relatively soon here. She said because of our dedication to this and sponsoring the main stage, so the entire stage is sponsored by FDN. We're the only one there. It's going to be an FDN conference with a bunch of other individuals to network with in the space. Code HDP actually gets you 50% off all the tickets. So you only need to spend $297 to go to 2 full days of the conference. We will also be hosting a business workshop there, which every single FDN will be able to attend. Myself and Reed will most likely be hosting that, but it's going to be a 90-minute business intensive with yourselves and other health professionals. It is going down. So we're so excited to see you guys. Oh, nice. Gina said she loves the program. She went to HICS and met Detective Ed. Oh, hey, yeah. Hey, Gina. Bella said, new trainee, you're here. Hello from Sydney, Australia. We're glad to have you guys. So sorry for my promotion there and my advertisement. I couldn't resist. I'm just so excited to see you guys. Again, that's the background if you're just tuning in. This is what beautiful Miami, Florida looks like if you've never been there before. So we'll be talking plenty about that and giving you guys more details as we come. Dr. Aron Gonshor is our guest today. This is not his first rodeo on the Health Detective Podcast. He's one of the people who helped us start out the Lab&Learn. He owns Fluids IQ. He's our chief scientific officer. And this guy he already brings the energy on the podcast. Until you meet him in person, you do not realize how much energy this man has. So thank you so much for doing this again with us.
I'm so tired now.
I can exhaust people pretty easily when I start.
It's a pleasure, Evan. Really it is. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Okay.
So I'll share my screen this screen in just a moment for the lab. Could we just give a high level overview in case someone's tuning in for the first time? What lab are we going over today?
Well, we're doing what we call the Metabolic Wellness Profile, which is a very interesting one. It's a profile that is done in dried urine. And we're going to have an awful lot to say about dried urine. But really it deals with some of the major issues which are very important in trying to figure out what's going on in our body. One of them has to do with protein metabolism. The second one is how the liver actually functions, especially its detox. And thirdly, which is probably most important, is how does the cell work and what is the effect of oxidation on the DNA in the nucleus and the mitochondria of that cell, critical to having the body function. And all of that is in a package that we call a profile for metabolic wellness.
Awesome. All right, we will get the screen shared here. Guys, if it's your first Lab&Learn, welcome. We're doing this twice a month now. We are very rapidly considering the idea of doing it 3 or 4 times a month because you guys are loving this. Highly encourage you to engage with us as we're going along here. Dr. Gonshor always does a great job. He will present to you here, give you a lot of great information, and if you ask questions as we go along, we will get to those questions at the end. So, excuse me. I don't know if you're able to put that in like a presenter mode or full screen.
Well, for some reason, I can't do that. I think you may be able to. I'm not sure it's not allowing me to do that.
Okay. Maybe that's because we're already sharing the screen. So what I'm going to do, if I can, I'm going to turn this off. You can stop the share, Dr. Gonshor, and then maybe we put it in full screen on yours and we reshare. I'm going to actually answer some questions in the chat already.
I like that. Okay.
Thank you. Gina said, is there a link to Miami FDN event? Well, if you're asking for the link, I better see you there. I had it in the captions. I'll put it in the chat once I have a moment. Let me get this shared for Dr. Gonshor. That's looking a lot better, my friend. Here we go.
Okay, so we don't have a lot of time. So let me make sure that everybody understands that we're going to be doing a quick overview. It's like seeing it from 30,000 feet up. But let's be very clear. Each one of these particular aspects of the profile have hours of information that we could be going over and do go over when we get into detail in the various FDN lectures that we give. So we can do all of these things. We can get into the weeds, so to speak. But today I'm just going to give you an overview of what's called, as I said earlier, the Metabolic Wellness Profile. And it consists of the 3 aspects: digestion, liver detoxification, and oxidative stress. And what you would normally get is a first page, which would give you the actual analytical results, and then a bunch of pages in the report after that that really go into detail of what is going on with each one of those functions. So let's take a look at this and see. Remember that metabolism is a key aspect that you deal with as a clinician. And metabolic dysfunction shows itself in a tremendous number of different ways. And you need to really become adept at understanding what are the underlying causes of a lot of these problems, be it everything from carbohydrate metabolism, neural health, here's detox activity, immune modulation, etc. All of these things are extremely important and need to be really dissected. You need to get down to understand what is causing those problems. And these labs that we're talking about, and the one today, are really there to help you. Labs are ultimately an aid. They're a help in giving you an understanding of what may be going on. So let's first take a look at digestion. And what we're going to look at really is protein digestion. And we know that normally, when you have protein metabolism, the various stages of proteolysis really deals with the following. You go from proteins. Proteins are broken down into polypeptides. Polypeptides are then broken down in amino acids, which the body can use to build up the various types of proteinaceous substances it needs for whatever it wants to do. But that can break down. And abnormal protein metabolism really deals with a problem of one particular amino acid. There are many, but one particular one, tryptophan, which is used by bacterial cells for their metabolism. And if they are misbehaving, if there is dysbiosis, meaning various types of bacteria which are not normally there as commensal bacteria in the gut, what you end up with are a number of toxic byproducts. And one in particular is called indole. And indole is going to show up in a very interesting way. And it really then deals with what is the first thing that we are showing in this particular profile. We are looking at indican. Indican is really a tool to monitor the efficiency of protein digestion. And so in the intestine, you get some partially digested food, including tryptophan. And tryptophan is used by anaerobic bacteria in their normal cycle. And one of the things that they form is indole. Now, indole goes through the blood circulation and ends up in the liver. And in the liver, it goes through various steps, which eventually create indole potassium sulfate. There's a big word. And that is what we call indican. And indican has been around as a testing modality for decades, but it isn't something that has normally been done in dried urine. And that's what we're showing it in. And so indican shows up in the kidney and eventually will show up in urine. And so what is indican really? Oh, does everybody see this? Everything disappeared. Here we are again. Okay. So indican, what conditions create elevated levels of indican? Because that's one of the things you're going to want to know. And Evan, for some reason, this doesn't seem to be working. Let me see if I can get this back again.
That's okay. Yeah, I don't see it moving on mine. No worries. We'll
Yeah.
just do the old reset.
I don't know why.
All right. See, over 30 of you on. Thank you for coming on with us. If this is your first Lab&Learn, listen, our lab information is good. Sometimes tech sucks, though.
Okay. So what conditions create elevated levels of urinary indican? Well, dysbiosis. That is an improper balance of bacteria in the gut. That creates elevated urinary indican. If you've got an excess of protein intake, specifically lectins, and lectins you get in peanuts and lentils, meat, wheat, etc., that causes elevated urinary indican, as does poor protein digestion. And that's important because a lot of people are suffering from issues of low or no hydrochloric acid. They have hypo or achloridria. And they also may have low digestive enzyme production. All of that can have poor protein digestion, which will lead to elevated urinary indican. Protein malabsorption into the system, increased intestinal permeability by various kinds of parasitic and fungal infections and toxins, which we're going to go into in a few moments, and then a plethora of other issues which can cause elevated urinary indican. And we can spend an hour on each one of these. Bottom line, a lot of things can cause elevated urinary indican. And the detective in you is going to need to deal with all of the things that FDN, for example, has taught you to try to get down to the hidden source of the problem. And if those urinary indican results are elevated, well, what are some of the possible directions that you go into? And so here I'm giving you just a very quick idea. One of the ways would be, for example, optimizing levels of stomach acids. And you can go to the right here because you would be doing a possible investigation. You'd be checking, are these people using antacids? Do they have high levels of H2? Are they using protein pump inhibitors, PPIs, some of the best-selling stuff in the pharmacies? You might want to replenish their digestive enzymes. You may be doing pro and prebiotic supplementation as gut support. And there are further tests that you may end up doing. Mucosal barrier tests that FDN has. It's one of its fundamental tests. We also offer that to FDN. You may want to do a comprehensive digestive stool analysis. You may want to do SIBO testing, food sensitivity testing, etc. So indican is a very valuable way of being able to see how the body is dealing with digestion. Let's jump to liver detox. Well, we know that the liver has a number of extremely critical, essential functions. Functions in metabolism, in synthesis of proteins, of fats, of carbohydrates. We talk about cholesterol and bile, which comes from cholesterol. Detoxification, a classic issue that needs to be dealt with, and so on. So there are over 500 functions that go on in the liver and various kinds of critical metabolic processes. And if they don't go on properly, you run into trouble. And so with daily life overloads, as we say, you get into liver dysfunction. And what could that be due to? Well, we know what some of the major ones are. Alcohol intake, classic cirrhosis of the liver. Tragic for many, many millions of people who are drinking too much alcohol. Smoking, coffee and energy drinks, especially if you're not doing it in moderation. Excessive workloads, prescription and over-the-counter medicines. Remember, all of those have to be broken down in the liver. And so the liver is really put under stress. Poor nutrition. The liver needs that nutrition in order to build up what it uses to do all these other functions, etc. And of course, stress. Stress is critical. And if you're under chronic stress, the liver is one of the organs that really gets affected. So we're going to deal with one of the major functions of the liver, and that's its function of detoxification. Well, what is it? Well, it's a biochemical process. What you're really doing, and we'll go into that in a few moments, it takes non-water soluble compounds, which many compounds coming into the body are, and it transforms them into water soluble. Why? Because water soluble can go into the rest of the body and can be excreted from the body. And if you can't do that in the liver, the body has a major problem. So remember, you want to be able to excrete through the urine, through sweat, through stool, etc. If you can't do that, that's a major problem. So the benefit of that is it protects the body from adverse effects of both external and internal toxins. Toxins, well, what is a toxin? Well, it's a substance that disrupts proper body functioning. Ultimately, that's the major definition. And you can get toxin overload due to whatever reason, or you can be undernourished, which means that even small amounts of toxin are not being properly dealt with because your body is undernourished. It doesn't have the wherewithal to be able to deal with it. Compromised digestion. You're taking in the food, but it's not being digested properly. So at the end of the day, you have less effective detoxification processes due to those three things. And detoxification is ultimately nutrient dependent. If you're undernourished, as I say, you cannot properly detoxify. And where do toxins come from? Well, my God, they come from all over the place. Exogenous toxins, meaning toxins from outside the body. I've given you a short list here from pollution to pesticides, plastics. I don't have to tell you, there are nanoplastics in every living thing on the planet. Body care products, all the things which we really wouldn't even think are an issue, create exogenous toxins. But they're also endogenous, toxins produced within the body itself as byproducts of normal metabolic function. A healthy body can eliminate them, but if you're missing certain nutrients or you're in overload, then you cannot detoxify properly. And why detoxify? Well, the chemicals, and by the way, there are 60,000 chemicals in North America that we are aware of that are causing possibilities or probabilities of toxin overload. If you don't detoxify properly, you get that association with many chronic diseases. Fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, CFS, diabetes, Parkinson's, and other neurological issues, cardiovascular, endocrine, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, depression, the list goes on and on. And that is due to chemicals that are coming out of you. Here's a very busy slide, But basically, these are the pathways that you deal with in detoxification in the liver. And I'm not expecting everyone to learn everything here in the next 5 seconds. What I did want to show you is that a toxin comes in and it's fat soluble. The liver goes through its first phase. It breaks down the toxin to make it a metabolite, an intermediate metabolite that is more water soluble, allowing you to go to phase 2 to neutralize the toxin, which then makes it water soluble. So it is now a derivative of the original toxin that can be excreted. And it gets excreted in what we call phase 3. It gets excreted through the serum, into the kidney, and into urine, or from the bile into the intestines and out as feces. So one way or the other, you're getting rid of it. So urinary bile acids, their levels in urine and also in feces or blood or bile are markers for various diseases. Now we're talking about bile acids, which you find in urine. And that's associated with a whole number of problems: hyperlipidemia, too much fat, cholestasis, the liver and the gallbladder specifically that are not functioning optimally, etc. And these bile acids can also exist in what's called a sulfated, a salt form, and it enhances their ability to be excreted both in the feces and in the urine. And bile acids perform as well as existing non-bile acid parameters in being able to uncover liver disease. And that's why we can use bile acids as an excellent way of being able to know how well the liver is functioning. So it's useful in populations for screening for latent liver disease. It's one of the first things that shows you if the liver is functioning properly. And it has a convenience. It can be tested with a spot sample of urine, dried urine sample. So urinary bile acids highly correlate with serum bile acids. That's important because the gold standard are serum bile acids. And urinary bile acids correlate very well, which means that they can be a surrogate screening modality. They can act instead of the blood. And what we use are bile acids, specifically two primary ones, cholic acid and chenodeoxycholic acid. And I don't want everybody to have to memorize that. What you need to know is that bile acids are synthesized in the liver. They come from cholesterol. They form these two primary ones that I just mentioned. They then form secondary bile acids, which then get conjugated with glycine and taurine to give you a total of 12 bile acids, 2 plus 2 plus another 8. So you've got 12 bile acids, and that's what we test for. And just to remind you that bile acids, for the most part, when they're produced in the liver, they get into the gallbladder, then into the intestine, and from the ileal part of the intestine, they come back into the liver. So most of it gets recycled, but about 5% is lost and goes out into the urine, so that you're able to pick up bile acids very easily in urine. What are the causes? Well, elevated bile acids have many causes. Obstructive jaundice or cholestasis. In other words, the liver and the gallbladder are not working properly. It can be acute or chronic hepatitis, liver cirrhosis due to alcoholism, cancer, etc. There can be bile acid malabsorption, improper intestinal bile acid absorption. And those people who have that problem have a very watery diarrhea. It's one of the key things that you see. The signs and symptoms of very high total bile acids is very unstable blood sugar levels. There's a problem in losing weight. People say, I'm trying everything, I can't lose weight. And that's because their liver isn't functioning properly. They start getting an elevated level of low density lipoproteins. Those are the LDLs, those are the bad cholesterol, etc. That can happen. Headaches, irritability, depression, various hormone imbalances, and of course, a putrid body odor, which is one of the key features that you will see. I remember on the floors in the hospital when they'd come in and you'd smell the body odor, you'd say, this is a person who is having a major liver problem and their bile acid function. And so there are correlations. Liver cell damage due to infection or inflammation will show up with elevated levels. Liver congestion, a missing gallbladder, etc. All of these things will end up giving you higher levels, but there are also low levels of total bile acids. And those causes are different types of cholestasis, a decreased level of the secondary bile acids, gallstones, polyps, abscesses in the liver and in the gallbladder, poor intestinal or enterohepatic bile circulation. It's not being recirculated properly. Why? You have to find out. Is it in the gallbladder? Is it in the intestine, etc.? People with gallbladder removal will not be able to properly circulate this. People with obesity, high cholesterol diets, those with diabetes or building up to diabetes with metabolic function problems, malabsorption, or cirrhosis, mostly due to alcohol use. And the signs and the symptoms, well, you'll often see them in irritable bowel disease problem. Inflammatory bowel disease will give you a lot of these problems. There'll be diarrhea, trapped or bad smelling gas, stomach cramps, bloating, very erratic bowel movements, itchy skin, very smelly stool, and that's very pale. And that's one of the things they look for immediately. And the correlations, well, you want to know, are there digestive symptoms? Is the person losing weight? Are they very irritable? Are there hormone imbalances, etc.? All of these things need to be looked at. And just to let you know that there are various things that one can do to try to repair some of the function of the liver with various supporting foods, root vegetables, various berries, grapes, etc., cruciferous vegetables, fatty fish like mackerel and salmon, etc., nuts, the various bulbous plants, bitter greens like broccoli, very, very popular. Removal of causative factors that are harming the liver. Because remember, the liver is a primary organ, for example, for lactate clearance. So one of the things you want to avoid is anything that's going to increase lactate, which you may be taking with coffee, sugar, alcohol, processed foods, etc. Intermittent fasting. Bile is continually stored in the gallbladder when you're not eating. So if you're doing intermittent fasting, it increases the bile in the gallbladder, which you want, because that is then available for what happens when food comes into the intestine and you need to break down some of that food, reducing stress. Lower stress and increased bile production is extremely important. It improves detoxification. And at the same time, it's going to balance your hormones. And it optimizes the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins in the small intestine, which require a proper functioning liver and bile acids. And there's a whole number of supplements, which I'm putting up here just to let you know that we're not forgetting that these supplements can be of importance. Some of the very important ones are adenomethionine, SAMe, alpha lipoic acid is very, very popular. Let's go to the last one, which is oxidative stress, and I consider that as probably being the most important of the three. So what causes cell damage? Well, it's caused by any number of things: UV light, radiation, smoking, of course, pollution, any number of other issues. Metabolism, just the mere fact that we're living, will all cause that. And a major cause of cell and DNA damage in the cell is oxidative stress. So what is oxidative stress? Because you hear an awful lot about it today. And this is not a major lecture on oxidative stress, but oxidative stress is caused by free radicals. And what are free radicals? It is any entity in the body that contains one or more unpaired electrons and participates in a biochemical reaction. Because if you remove an electron, that's oxidation. If you receive an electron, it's called reduction. That electron transfer is what's called the redox reaction, and that's going on millions of times a second in the body. And so oxidative stress, free radicals are produced in the cells constantly because it's part of the normal metabolic process. And antioxidants are in the cells neutralizing these free radicals. That is part of the mitochondria producing energy and using oxygen. That's what keeps us alive, but it also creates free radicals. So there is nothing unusual about having free radicals. It's what happens when they are imbalanced. So an imbalance between reactive oxygen and the system's ability to detoxify that, that's the problem. And that's what causes oxidative damage when they're not properly balanced. And there are a whole slew of both endogenous, meaning in the body, and environmental factors that are going to create reactive oxygen species, ROS. And it's all of these things, that these are all produced in the cell, as are all of these reactive nitrogen species and a number of others. And they're produced, and I'm going to mention it here, endogenously in the cell. They are produced by the mitochondria. They're also produced by every other cell in the body, apart from what you see here. And so reactive oxygen and nitrogen species are in overproduction and in imbalance. That's what oxidative stress is. So overproduction of free radicals can lead to many chronic diseases. And I've mentioned just a few: atherosclerosis, that causes cardiovascular disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, generalized cardiovascular disease, stroke, cancer, etc. And chronic inflammation is a common component in these conditions. And oxidative stress is a key component of chronic inflammation. And the signs of oxidative stress should be well known. If not, you want to know them: fatigue, memory loss, a lot of people with brain fog. A lot of people will tell you about they've got joint pain, muscle pain. You get early wrinkles and gray hair, a decrease in eyesight, especially at a younger age, etc. I'm not going to bore you with all of it. So chronic inflammation and the production of these reactive oxygen and nitrogen species, you see them with all of what you're seeing on this busy slide: the activation of inflammatory cells, the induction and activation of oxidant generating enzymes. All of that occurs due to infections, tissue damage for various reasons, inflammatory disease like colitis and pancreatitis, various environmental oxidants, etc. The list is very long, and that can cause other diseases, or, of course, depending on the amount of damage, can go to a malignant state, can form cancer. And so there are many biomarkers that have been developed for oxidative stress. And the one that we're going to focus on is this one, 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine, lovingly known as 8-OH-DG. And there are many things that oxidative stress can do as a source coming endogenously from an antioxidant dysfunction, exogenous problems, whatever it is, that causes oxidative stress, which then will cause DNA oxidation, protein oxidation, glycooxidation, or lipid peroxidation. And there are all kinds of biomarkers for all of these. But what is the key one? The key one that you can see in the literature is the one that creates a problem within the DNA, both of the nucleus of the cell and in the DNA, which also sits in the mitochondria. For those of you who are not aware, there is also DNA within the mitochondria of the cell. And again, the sources, we're not going to go through it again. There are many endogenous and exogenous sources. And so there is a DNA oxidative damage test, and that's 8-OHDG. And it is the biomarker, and this is important, of cumulative cellular oxidative stress. It's not an acute marker, it's a cumulative marker. That means it builds up and it doesn't change every second. It takes time for it to change. So it gives you the opportunity to be able to get to see it in things like dried urine, and then to be able to monitor. So you can have a simple collection, dried urine, which is an excellent medium for cumulative, stable markers. I'm utilizing that phrase because I'm going to discuss that later on. So 8-OHDG increases in that level is associated with many dysfunctions and diseases. The aging process, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, cancer, diabetes, hypertension, any number of things. DNA oxidative damage also affects lipid and protein function, and that's why we've chosen this particular biomarker as opposed to the biomarkers for lipid and protein, because by knowing that 8-OHDG is not functioning properly tells you that there's a good chance that the lipids and the proteins in the cell are also not functioning. So very clearly, cellular 8-OHDG concentration has been known for a while as an established marker of oxidative stress, of aging, and even of carcinogenesis, meaning the development of malignancies, of cancer. And it's associated with many pathological processes, which I'm not going to bother you with, but it's a cornucopia of plenty of all of these diseases. And you just need to understand that when we say it's 8-OHDG, this is the cross-linked DNA. And what it's really doing is it's attacking one of the 4 bases that make up the structure of the DNA, specifically guanine. It's the G in the GCAT, the 4 bases. And this is the one that is being affected and oxidized. And that change, that genotoxic instability and damage coming from all of that will alter cell behavior, or it can actually create cell death, apoptosis, the death of the cell itself. And one hopes, of course, that you don't run into that. But there are many ways to prevent it. And that's the whole point of this. It's a biomarker which gives you a way of monitoring that there's something going on. So you can help the cell, you can help the body try to rebalance itself, because you want to get down to the core. Why is it happening? So balancing a diet, smoking cessation goes without saying, but we're saying it. Regular exercise, no matter what age, stress reduction, decreasing your exposure to chemicals, alcohol intake, decrease it, adequate sleep. It's all the things which we talk about, but it's got to be done. So those healthy lifestyle choices are a major component. And added to that are all of these other antioxidant supplements. And there are many. The carotenoids, the coenzymes, all the vitamins, melatonin. You spend a lot of time on that, etc. Glutathione. These are key antioxidant supplements. And there are many foods in the diet that are high in antioxidants. I'm just giving you a list here. I'm sure you can all look it up and make sure that both you and the people you're going to be working with will be able to really look at that in their diet to increase their antioxidants. But I wanted to just mention melatonin for a moment, just to let you know that it is, excuse me, it is formed from tryptophan and serotonin in the gut, mostly, believe it or not, in the gut, not just the brain, but mostly in the gut, to form melatonin. And that, as you know, is very well known as a regulator of circadian rhythm. It's produced at night, so it's very important. It's also used for chelation of transitional metals. But what most people don't realize is that its major function is actually not even the one dealing with sleep, although that's a very important function. It functions as an antioxidant, and it is a regulator of GI motility and of local anti-inflammatory problems in the gut. It's involved in age-related neurogenic diseases, male fertility, and its antioxidant effect in the mitochondria. It scavenges free radicals. It just pulls them up, and it upregulates. That's a big word for saying it increases the levels of glutathione so that the cell, and especially the nucleus, can have the wherewithal to be able to deal with some of those. And a good circadian rhythm creates a decrease in oxidative stress. So all of this comes together. You want to have a good antioxidant function, you better get good sleep. It's not one or the other. You've got to do both in order to be able to have that effect. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes just to let you know how you read this, because what you're going to see on a typical report is 3 of these horizontal bars. And these are quintiles. 20% of the population is in each one of these, from negative to low to moderate to high to very high. And on the first page, you're going to see, for example, for indican, there's going to be a result, a quantitative result. And in this case, it'll say, oh, this is greater than 135.8 micrograms per milligram of creatinine. And at the same time, you're going to see a big diamond. And that's greater than 135. It's actually, maybe it's 150 or 160. We just say it's greater than 135. It's very high. And what happens if something is very high? What if there is a very elevated indican level? And here is a typical report, first page. So if there's a very high indican, what is it telling you? Well, there's variation in protein digestion. There's poor protein. So it's leading to amino acids, poor glycemic control. You're not controlling glucose. Your hormones get imbalanced. Proteins begin to putrefy. That's the term for dysfunction in protein metabolism. So it leads to any number of problems, hypermotility of the gut. It's not allowing the food to stay there long enough. It's getting rid of it very quickly. You're not hydrating efficiently. There's bloating, there's gas. That's part of that hypermotility. And it's an indicator of dysbiosis. The bacteria are totally imbalanced, and increases in intestinal permeability and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. SIBO leads to liver congestion. Here you go, poor detox. And there are other tests that you would do. You would do the mucosal barrier assessment, which is another test that FDN does. It's another one of the Fluids IQ fundamental tests for FDN. You'd look at zonulin. You'd look at DAO and histamine, as well as the hormones, etc. What about if the total bile acids are very high? Well, liver congestion, poor detoxification. That's what we just talked about. There's hepatocellular damage. Why? Well, could be due to drug use, toxicity. There's an antigen or immune complex load that's just overloading. Why? We don't know. We got to find out why. There are hormone imbalances. And there are a whole series of detox protocols that you need to go to. You need to deal with water intake, exercise, get proper sleep, an anti-inflammatory diet, toxin reduction, etc. And of course, other testing, which we're not going to go into. What about if 8-OHDG is very high? That's the DNA oxidation level. Well, there's cellular oxidative damage. There's a loss of lipid and protein function in the cell because that cell is being damaged. That leads to accelerated aging. It leads to diabetes, cardiovascular disease, people with attention deficit, hyperactivity disorder, chronic fatigue syndrome. All of these things due to the cell and the nucleus not being able to properly detoxify. The causes, well, a lot of causes. Chronic dysbiosis in the gut. Remember, the gut is the source of so much that goes wrong in the body. Increasing levels of bacteria like E. coli and H. pylori, heavy metals, other environmental triggers. Well, support, well, clearly antioxidant support, which we discussed a few minutes ago, would be very important. Doing the mucosal barrier assessment, doing hormones. You can either start with the saliva and then you do it in urine. And very elevated, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but what if you've got elevated total bile acids and total 8-OHDG? Well, you're beginning to get the idea. You need to look. Elevated toxicity, too many cellular free radical damage, increased load on the liver. And what are you going to do? You're going to check a whole number of things. Pathogenic vectors, drug use. What's that person taking as drugs? Environmental factors. Where are they working? What are they doing? An antigenic overload. And by the way, if they're highly symptomatic, they have to be referred in certain cases to a proper medical specialty group that may have to deal with certain issues. That can happen. And if it does happen, it needs to be sent to the appropriate authorities to deal with that, and so on. I'm not going to overdo this. I think you get the idea. And of course, you will have three of them. And here I'm showing you three. Elevated liver load and toxicity and intestinal dysfunction. Both indican and total bile acids are very high. Luckily, the 8-OHDG is normal. So you still have a chance here to deal with things like supplements, support the digestion, support their liver function. That may be sufficient to be able to deal with it because their cells are still not in danger territory. But that can happen very, very quickly, etc. So I'm not going to go into what supplements you would use, but of course, exercise and diet, the various supplements, and you can ask me, I'll send you all of that if you would like. We will be able to go over it. But very low total bile acids, just an example. What happens if it's very low? It's not always very, very high. Well, if it's very low, that's due to a very weak enterohepatic circulation. In other words, the bile acids that are produced normally get recirculated, but in some cases they don't. Why? Is there a genetic disorder? It's impairing the bile production? Are you using antibiotics that are screwing up the intestinal flora? It's not allowing them to do their job in the recirculation? Is there biliary stasis? In other words, there's not enough bile that is being produced to really do this. For example, in severe liver disease like cirrhosis, there's low bile production. That could be it. What's an action plan for that? Well, one thing you want to do is to check their intestinal permeability. You want to know if their gut has a bunch of open doors to all kinds of stuff getting into the body. You got to check that. You may want to check their food sensitivities. And of course, if they're very highly symptomatic, one of the things is you may need to refer it out. But before you do that, you want to check and see what's going on. So this is a very powerful test that will give you a very quick idea of what is actually going on. And I'm done.
Sorry, I was just trying to get myself unmuted. Oh my goodness. So first of all, this is Q&A time. I know we've had a lot here. So I just want to say, can we just start with this? I see 40 plus of you on right now. Can you just drop a thank you in the chat for Dr. Gonshor? You guys got to understand, these people don't get paid to come on and do this. This is stuff that they come.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that.
I told him the check was in the mail. I just didn't tell him I haven't, it's not for much, that's for sure. But yes, no, they come out of here literally just to help out and teach stuff. Clearly there's passion for this subject. And I'm not going to lie, you're giving the Lab&Learns a run for their money because everyone comes with some great information, but you got the full presentation. So let's get to some questions here. There was some stuff from actually earlier. So we will buff some of these out. Okay. Sorry about that. Oh, that one was from Miami. I thought I went a little too far.
Can we discuss the connection between low bile acids and intestinal permeability more? Are the acids not getting circulated back due to leaky gut? Well, just remember, one of the major causes of leaky gut is dysbiosis. What kind of dysbiosis? Well, you want the list? It's very long. But at the end of the day, it's the dysbiotic behavior in the intestine, which could be the reason why you're not getting that recirculation. And when that happens, one of the many things that occurs is that you create a leaky gut, meaning the permeability begins to increase because the commensal bacteria are not able to control those proteins in the mucosal barrier that keep the tight junctions closed. And as soon as that breaks down, excuse the expression, all hell breaks loose. And that happens quite quickly.
Awesome. Jennifer, I just dropped a question for you in the chat, Jennifer. So if you could specify that for me, because sorry, it's been a while now and I forgot. Here's something else that Jennifer said, though. I've heard a lot about TUDCA and would be curious to hear what you think about that. So this was about midway through your presentation regarding digestion. A lot of people brought this up, seem to like the supplement. Do you have any thoughts on it?
No.
Okay. That's the best part about you. If you got a thing, you'll give us all of it. If he doesn't have it, he's very honest.
It's not that. I'm not here to discuss what I think of various supplements. I'm not being facetious. I think I need to be very careful about not dealing with the various aspects of both supplements, medications, etc. In other words, the whole issue of treatment is something that I stay away from.
Actually, that's fair. And you said that to me last time, so I will remember that for the future. This one, I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'm willing to discuss it privately with someone if they would like me to.
Sure. No pressure with this. Gina's awesome. She was just genuinely wondering. She said, will this slide deck be uploaded to the MDP? So I think these slides today were Fluids IQ's property, though. So are we able to give the slides? I mean, obviously they can watch the replay, but are we allowed to share the slides?
Are they with FDN?
Yes, they are.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. Of course. It's always our pleasure because at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is to give you information. And if you get that information and if you get it right, of course, it's nice to get Fluids IQ to get more business and then, people are going to send in tests. Yeah, that's wonderful. But at the end of the day, why are we doing all of this? We're doing it to make sure that we can help people. And I mean that, by the way. That's why I'm in this right now. I'm not a young man. And one of the reasons I told Evan that when we were in San Diego, that it's done in order, it's a passion to help people and to do it right.
Don't kill me for this. I know you say you're not a young man. You shocked me in the most positive way possible when I met you in person. Am I allowed to say your actual age?
No.
Okay, all right. I'm smarter than that. See, at least I asked.
I'm 39. That was Jack Benny's thing. I'm 39.
You don't look a day over 30.
I did want to say one thing.
Sure.
I didn't want to forget this. I said earlier that dried urine is a wonderful medium for many things, including the metabolic wellness profile. Because, like dried blood spot, it is able to work well when you are looking for analytes that don't change acutely, meaning they don't change every minute. Remember, I mentioned with 8-OHDG, it gets up to a certain level, and it's not just falling down and coming back up, and it doesn't do that. So dried urine is an excellent medium for that. That's why we do it. Mm-hmm. What it's not good for, everyone, is for pulsatile analytes. What does that mean? For analytes that are changing constantly, every second and every minute. What is the prototype of that kind of pulsatile analyte? Hormones. What am I saying? If you want to get an accurate idea of hormonal function, you need to do it not in dried urine. It cannot do it. You cannot wish it to work. Hormones need to be looked at over time. That's the only way that you're going to get an accurate idea. What is it? 24-hour, 48-hour, not in a dried urine sample that's giving you a moment in time. That's just the way it is in science.
Folks, I'll just plant this seed for you. Remember, there's places, because we're not going to mention anything, but there's places and products that have fantastic marketing, and then there's people that have been in the scientific field for decades and know what the heck they're talking about. So just keep that in mind. I got to shout this person out. I know a bunch of people said thank you, but I love seeing that her name's even here. Dr. Kim Boehm, how the heck are you? She just said, thank you so much for this excellent refresher. This sinks deeper every time I hear it. She's great. She owns a lab with her husband. By the way, Dr. Kim, I mention you all the time because for those that say that you cannot grow an FDN business without being a social media influencer or whatever, Dr. Kim barely uses social media. I never really see her on. And she did this solely through giving in-person talks. And she didn't reinvent the wheel. She did Reed's lecture packages. So they still work. Gina, super exciting. Sorry, going back to the Miami thing for a second. You said the code for 50% off is good. So does that mean you have already signed up for the Biohacker Expo, Gina? Because that would be amazing. It'd be good to see you again. Let me know. A bunch of people just saying thank you. I know that you can see those. And thank you guys. I know it seems so silly when I ask that every time, but these people take the time out of their day to come do this. We just invite them on the podcast. It's not like we get 1 million downloads. We're a popular podcast, but we're not the biggest in the world. So it's just amazing when they come on. Jennifer had a comment here. I'll explain what this is. So back when you were explaining indican, she was asking if the indican could be higher. And I think it was also the bile acids too. In someone that doesn't have a gallbladder. Now, you did mention that throughout, so just to get a more concise thing at the end, do you think indican or the bile acids could be affected by someone who does not have a gallbladder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we can go into that in detail, but we're not going to spend time, but that's important. Remember, if you're not properly getting the enzymatic action, right, the pancreatic and the stuff going through the gallbladder, you are not going to be able to break down many of the substances. And most of it's done in the pancreatic area is dealing with carbohydrate and so on. But anybody who thinks that you're not getting splay, meaning that it's affecting not just the carbohydrate, but the lipids and the protein, think again. And so basically, yes, that will happen.
Awesome. Guys, we're just at about an hour. Dr. Gonshor, every time, and you know I mean this, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Thank you to the 40 of you who are on watching this. I love that you guys love this. How special is this that we get to be in a community where, you know, these are exciting topics and you get to watch a guy passionately speak about the injustices of dried urine for hormones, and you guys receive it well and love it. So I think that's amazing. Dr. Gonshor, I'll plant a little seed for you here as well. Maybe we do mucosal barrier assessment or something sometime soon. I think that'd be a cool Lab&Learn to have on, which is a leaky gut test, more or less, for lack of better words for you guys.
And starting early next year, we're adding LPS. Oh, yeah.
Oh
Lipopoly
my gosh, I actually want to do a self experiment with that because so many of these spore based probiotics talk about reducing LPS when you take them. And for unintentional reasons, it was actually a complete accident. I realized I haven't been taking one. I would love to do a little, what do you call that, R&D with you.
Yeah, let's do MBA. It's an extremely important test, and I think it's very, very good.
Sweet, guys. We will see you soon. Remember, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is not to be a cheesy YouTuber. It's because then you get the notifications for when these come out. We try to adapt to our guests' schedules. So, yes, we'll always do Lab and Learns on Tuesdays, generally speaking. But sometimes it could be 11 a.m. Sometimes it could be 4. So please subscribe so that you know what's coming up. Similar with our podcast, we release that Monday through Friday, but we also try to adapt to our guests' schedules. It also allows for people with varying work schedules to attend some live. I saw Bella today. This is the first time she was able to get on live. So we're glad to have different people every single time. We love y'all.
Just tell Dr. Kimberly Bohm, I see it here, 24-hour urine hormone next, please. Listen, anytime you guys want to, we're open. We're transparent here. Sure, we'll discuss it. I'm very happy to talk to anyone about this stuff.
One more comment. We might as well. Bella has a good one for you. And yes, Gina, this is my Atelier hoodie.
Atelier. Ooh.